How to clean your kidneys of oxalates and uric acid. Today, we're going to dive into this essential topic. But before we start, let's remember to keep things light and fun. After all, learning doesn't have to be a chore. So buckle up and let's embark on this journey to better health together. First off, let's talk about the kidney and how amazing it is. The kidney is a rugged organ, similar to the liver in that it can take a beating but can also regenerate. Each kidney is composed of roughly about 1 million tiny little filters, and these kidneys have to filter all day and all night long, 24/7, constantly. They filter blood. And where does this blood come from? Well, it comes from what you eat. So, all the food that you eat, all the junk food, all the alcohol that you drink, all the medications and all the drugs that you're exposed to, all the pollution, all the plastics, end up in the blood. And then they end up in the kidney. Your kidney has to then differentiate what it wants to recycle and what it needs to get rid of. So there's a high degree of complexity going on in this little filter called the nephron. The aging kidney. As you age, you start losing these little filters to the point where you can actually lose up to 20% of your kidney. They can shrink as you age, and so it becomes even more important that, as you age, you really start eating better and are exposed to fewer toxins, drugs, and medications. Of course, that's just the opposite, as when we age, we take more medications. And unfortunately, older people, especially if they end up in some type of home, are not eating the right foods. The kidneys also make certain hormones, one being to make red blood cells, the other one is for blood pressure. But let's dive into some things that really destroy the kidney. And there's even so-called healthy foods that are destroying the kidney, and we'll talk about those as well. The dreaded kidney stones. Let's first talk about what makes up a kidney stone. Having a kidney stone can create a lot of damage to your kidney, especially because it has these little crystals that can damage and create scar tissue of the kidney itself, as well as a little tube that connects the kidney to the bladder. Kidney stones most commonly come from what's called oxalate stones, like calcium oxalate stones. But you can also get them in a form of uric acid stones as well. One of the most important things to do, especially if you're prone to kidney stones, is to limit the amount of oxalates that you're exposed to. And if you're on the ketogenic plan, chances are you're probably eating something right now that is very high in oxalates. So, almonds, spinach, beet tops, peanuts, grains, beans, sweet potatoes, cassava, tapioca, kiwi, chocolate, Swiss chard, turmeric, cinnamon, and clove are all high in oxalates. The Theoxalate Dilemma. Oxalates create some issues that go beyond just problems in the kidney. They can create arthritis, as well as something called pseudo-gout. Gout is normally created by this uric acid crystal that's developing, but with pseudo-gout, it's not uric acid. There are some other types of crystals that are developing from gout and is normally created by this uric acid crystal that's developing. But with pseudo-gout, it's not uric acid. There are some other types of crystals that are developing from calcium and also can be worsened if you have high levels of oxalates. Most of the population can handle a lot of salt, but for a select small group of people, especially if they have gout or even pseudo-gout, they might do better without excessive salt. The big problem is the ratio of potassium to sodium, and if you had enough potassium, your salt level would be fine. But it's recommended playing around with the dosage and start lowering the salt and raising the potassium and see if you don't feel better. So by decreasing the salt, you're going to be excreting calcium a lot less and it won't develop into crystals. The gut connection. The other interesting point about oxalates has to do with malabsorption in your gut. If you have malabsorption, let's say you have inflammation, you have celiac or Crohn's or irritable bowel syndrome, or gastric bypass for example. So there's a certain level of damage in your digestive tract that doesn't allow you to absorb certain things, especially fats. And if you're doing like the ketogenic diet and or even carnivore, and you have all this fat that's coming into the gut, but you can't really absorb the fat, some of that fat is going to bind with the calcium, and that's going to leave the oxalates free to be reabsorbed, go into your blood, and end up in a kidney. So there is this interesting connection between fat binding to calcium and then freeing up this oxalate. If you're eating foods low in oxalates, you'd have nothing to worry about. Also, another point about that. If you're eating foods high in oxalates and you take more calcium with it, maybe through the dairy, then you're also protected. So if you're going to do some spinach dish and you had cheese with that, it might be helpful. So that's just another way to counter the damage of these oxalates on the kidney, since the kidney can be very sensitive to too much uric acid and oxalates. The citrate solution. When they usually do a urine test for people with gout or kidney stones, they usually always find that there are excessive amounts of calcium in the urine, excessive amounts of uric acid oxalates, and there are also lower amounts of this other thing called citrates. Now, what are citrates? Well, your body makes them. Also, you can get it from consuming citrus like lemons or limes. Citrates are really interesting because they actually bind with the oxalates in a way that prevents the calcium from binding, and it can lower your risk of getting kidney stones. The thing about consuming lemons is that they're alkaline. That's one way to counter gout if you have too much uric acid. So, this is why lemons are really good for the kidney. They protect the kidney. They have potassium in there. They provide some alkalinity, but they also protect against these oxalates. Another interesting natural remedy would be apple cider vinegar. Take like a tablespoon in your water in the morning as a way to prevent stones. So since the general population doesn't consume a lot of potassium foods, potassium in a like electrolyte powder or just high potassium foods are very, very beneficial for the kidneys, and they can help balance the sodium. Leafy greens and avocados are very, very high in potassium. The sugar threat. But I probably didn't talk about the most damaging thing to your kidney, which is sugar. The number one cause of end-stage kidney disease is diabetes, and that comes from a high-carb diet. So it's interesting if you look at the flip side of that ketogenic diet, low carb. You might hear reports that, oh, the ketogenic diet is really bad for your kidneys. But first of all, we're always recommending the healthy version of the ketogenic diet, so you're not going to develop ketoacidosis. Ketoacidosis occurs when you're a diabetic and you forget to take your insulin, and you have super high levels of acidity and ketones, which you're never going to see if you're not a diabetic. Actually, ketones are very healthy for the kidney, and a high-carb diet is not very healthy for the kidney because you're exposing the kidney the little filters with so much oxidation, and that's basically kind of rusting out the kidney. The summary. So let's just summarize some of the things that you can do to really keep these kidneys in check. 1. Have lemon water every morning. If you can squeeze a lemon, that would be best. Put it in the water, add your apple cider vinegar, drink your liquids. It's probably a good idea, especially if you're prone to kidney stones, to consume 2.5 liters of water, because kidney stones occur because there's a super saturated amount of urine, and you're getting all these crystals developing. So if you're drinking enough liquids, you're going to be fine with that. 2. The second point is to avoid high oxalate type foods. And if you do eat foods high in oxalates, add some dairy to it, or add some calcium to counter that. 3. Go on the low-carb ketogenic plan with intermittent fasting. 4. Also, out of all the sugars, fructose, by the way, can really spike your uric acid more than a lot of other things. So fructose is really, really bad, as in high fructose corn syrup. 5. Also, when you're consuming a lot of vitamin C, and if you're trying to get rid of your gout or your pseudo-gout, and you're consuming massive amounts of vitamin C in the form of ascorbic acid, well, just make some changes. Cut that out for a couple of days and see if your pain doesn't go away. And that's a wrap. Remember, your kidneys are your body's unsung heroes working tirelessly to keep you in tip-top shape. So let's return the favor by treating them right. Stay healthy, stay happy, and keep those kidneys clean. Thank you for joining us on this journey to better health. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more informative and fun health content. Until next time, keep it light, keep it informative, and keep it kidney-friendly.